The NBA trade deadline was absolute chaos. Anthony Davis pulled off wizard-level timing. James Harden somehow became a Cavalier. Ivica Zubac ended up a Pacer. Giannis, despite all the noise, never actually wanted out of Milwaukee. But somehow, the biggest shock of the entire deadline wasn't a blockbuster trade at all. It was a name that didn't move, because he was simply erased. Before we go any further, if you enjoy honest NBA breakdowns that go deeper than box scores, make sure you're part of the Ball IQ Zone family. These stories hit different when you understand the why behind them. Because buried under all that deadline madness was a headline nobody expected to read. Cam Thomas got waived. Not traded. Not benched. Waived. Just 1 year after averaging 24 points per game at age 24, one of the worst teams in the NBA looked at him and said, "We're done." And the rest of the league followed it up with something even louder. Silence. No assets offered. No late-round flyer. No desperate contender calling. Which means right now, a player who once scored 40 points in 3 straight games before turning 22, the youngest player in NBA history to ever do that, is without a team. Let that sink in. A scorer that prolific, younger than most breakout stars, suddenly has no market. And by all reports, teams aren't lining up either. The only real interest floating around so far? Milwaukee. And if you know the league, you know why that's not exactly reassuring. Interest from the Bucks usually means we'll see if you fit in 10 minutes a night, not a long-term vote of confidence. So how does this happen? How does someone who averaged 24 as a starter, someone with more 40-point games before turning 23 than Kawhi Leonard has in his entire career, end up unwanted? Is it the contract? Not even close. Cam is on a $6 million deal after Brooklyn refused to give him the long-term money many fans thought he deserved. This isn't about cap space. This isn't about money. Cam Thomas represents a player archetype that the modern NBA is quietly moving away from. A pure scorer who can get a bucket anytime, anywhere, but struggles everywhere else. And even his own coach made that clear. After a recent game, Wardy Fernandez didn't talk about Cam's shot making. He talked about efficiency, turnovers, defense, and playmaking. The irony? That game, Cam dropped 21 points in just 22 minutes against a top-tier opponent. Hyper-efficient. But the box score told a different story. 1 rebound, 1 assist, 0 steals, 0 blocks, and 4 turnovers. And that's where the story really begins. Because in today's NBA, scoring alone isn't enough anymore. And when Cam was asked after the game about being benched during Houston's run, his response said more than words ever could. Was it frustrating watching from the sideline while the Rockets took control? Cam paused and answered with just 2 words, "No comment." And in that moment, you could feel the disconnect. Because on the surface, this makes no sense. How do you bench a guy who just scored 21 points on 13 shots? How is that even a conversation? But this is where box score watching fails you. The real problem with Cam Thomas only reveals itself when the shots stop falling. And this season, they stopped falling more often than people want to admit. He's shooting around 40% from the field and just 32% from 3. And when efficiency drops to that level, everything else suddenly matters. The turnovers become louder, the lack of defense becomes visible, the ball movement stalls, and what once looked like confidence starts to look like tunnel vision. Take that same Houston game. Ignore the turnovers for a second. Just watch the process. Claxton slips the screen. 2 defenders jump the ball. This is a routine NBA read. 1 simple pass creates a layup. But Cam doesn't see it, or doesn't trust it, and pulls the ball back out to reset the offense. Possession wasted. A few plays later, Sharpie sets the screen. Same situation. The pass is right there. Again, Cam hesitates, waits, and this time loses his handle entirely. And this is the stuff that drives coaches insane. Because the NBA isn't about scoring by yourself, it's about scoring together. That's why players like Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, Jalen Brunson, and Steph Curry are special. Yes, they can drop 40 on any given night. But their real superpower is leverage. Their scoring threat bends the defense, and they weaponize that attention to create easy looks for everyone else. They turn points into pressure, and pressure into wins. Cam Thomas doesn't do that. Not consistently. And that's the harsh truth people avoid. Yes, he's a gifted scorer. He has counters. He can score from anywhere on the floor. But here's the uncomfortable part. There's always someone better. Look around the league. Look at top scorers on winning teams. Look even at struggling teams. Trae Young, Zion Williamson, Lauri Markkanen, Keontae George. Ask yourself honestly, is Cam better than them? More efficient? A better playmaker? A better defender? The answer is no across the board. And this isn't about slander. This is about fit. The NBA is a superstar league, and value isn't about how many points you can get. It's about how well you function around elite talent. That's why the comparison to Michael Porter Jr. matters. For years, MPJ thrived as a third or fourth option next to Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Spot-ups, cuts, simple reads, efficient buckets. Then he goes to Brooklyn, becomes a primary option, and suddenly averages 27 points per game, on better efficiency than Cam has ever shown. That's not an accident. That's modern NBA basketball. And it raises a question Cam Thomas still hasn't answered. If you're not the best scorer on the floor, what else do you bring? And this is where the conversation around Cam Thomas always gets uncomfortable, because it forces people to separate scoring from impact. Cam absolutely has an NBA-level skill. There is no debate about that. Not everyone in this league can walk into a game and give you 20 on pure shot-making alone. That matters. But the NBA isn't a scoring contest anymore. It's a value contest. Teams aren't asking, can you score? They're asking, what do you give us when the shots aren't falling? That's where Cam's situation becomes tricky. His scoring doesn't come with elite defense, it doesn't come with playmaking that bends a defense, and it doesn't come with off-ball gravity that changes how teams guard everyone else. When you look around the league, even the guys labeled as role players are doing multiple things at once. They're guarding up a position, they're making quick reads, they're spacing the floor, they're cutting, they're rebounding, they're surviving defensively. That's the price of admission now. And this isn't about disrespecting Cam Thomas. It's about understanding how thin the margin is. A player like Norman Powell didn't last because he could score. He lasted because he could score without hurting you. He defends, he moves without the ball, he hits open threes, and he can scale his role up or down depending on the night. Jordan Clarkson is another perfect example. He isn't trying to be a franchise guy. He's a controlled chaos scorer. Someone you deploy in short bursts to tilt momentum, not someone you build your offense around. Cam Thomas could absolutely thrive in that kind of role. 10 to 15 minutes. Second unit, green light, but with structure. Come in, hunt mismatches, get buckets, and then sit back down. That's real NBA value. But the problem comes when the expectations shift. When scoring becomes the only selling point, teams start asking tougher questions. Can you stay on the floor in playoff matchups? Can you defend when teams hunt you? Can you play next to stars without stopping the ball? If you dropped Cam into a rebuilding situation and told him to take 20 shots a night, he could probably average close to 30. But that kind of production doesn't move the needle. We've seen that movie before. Volume scoring on a bad team doesn't translate into wins, and front offices know it. They're chasing versatility, not numbers. So when people wonder why Cam Thomas hasn't locked down a stable NBA role yet, this is the answer. It's not talent, it's fit, it's efficiency, it's defense. It's accepting that less can sometimes be more. If Cam embraces a narrower role and sharpens the areas around his scoring, there is absolutely a place for him in this league. But until that happens, he's stuck in the hardest place an NBA player can be. Good enough to score, but not yet complete enough to be trusted when it matters most.